All right, I realize we're still waiting for one person, so I'll just take it real slow. But we probably won't finish the entire chapter today. But what I think we can do, we'll see, is between now and when we take our last break, we'll do this preparing the database section, which will take us up approximately to about page 178. And we'll take a break, and then we'll try to add the pagination section. That will take us, if we can get all that done, that will take us to the middle of page 190, which is just on adding the bootstrap. We can pick it up there tomorrow if we need to. That's not that big a thing. But the author says here, I can already display simple views that contain product details, but I am displaying the test data for the mock thing. So right now, again, we don't have the actual database data. So it says, before I can implement a real repository, I need to set up a database and populate it with some data. Now, when I was downstairs, Evan told me that he's been working ahead a little bit, and he had problems creating the database. I'm hoping we don't. I have not. When I did this twice before, I did not have a problem. We'll see if we do. All right? Okay. So it says I'm going to be using SQL Server as the database and the entity framework. Nothing new there. All right? And he talks about why he's using the entity framework again. That's all fine. All right. So, creating the database. The author says, local DB. You know this because this is what we used when we went through the example yesterday. All right. Now, if you raise your hand and go, am I going to have the same frigging problems I had yesterday? I hope not. If you did, I'm hoping you don't. All right. So it says the first step is to create the database connection. So open the Server Explorer. Now, just so you know, there's a few of these. What do I mean? Well, let me do a file, save all, and I'm going to close everything I've got open here. All right, so I'm right there. So the author says right here that we are to open the Server Explorer window, just so you know. That's that's View Server Explorer. That's not what we did yesterday. We did the SQL Server Object Explorer. So, well, what's the difference? They're kind of the same thing. All right? But we're going to open up Server Explorer. Why? Because that's what we were told right here. All right? Okay. Open the Server Explorer window and click the Connect to Database button. It says it looks like a power cable with a green plus sign. So let's see if we see that. Is there a power cable here with a green plus sign? I don't see anything that looks like that. All right, but you can take your mouse and put them over all these. Connect to database, connect to server, etc. Add server, and again, we want we want the Connect to Database button. Well, that was one of them. Wasn't that here? Nope. Connect to Database. I guess that is sort of what it looks like. Everybody see the one that I've got highlighted there? All right, so I'm going to click that. Brings up exactly what they show you on the screen on page 169 and 170. All right, so they say we can choose what's here, Microsoft SQL Server, SQL Client. Now, you may not have a local DB v11.0. I don't know if you do or not. If you don't, we're going to try v13. But let's try this. Not only that, since I've been using this longer than you, I may have it and you might not have it. Does all that make sense? All right. Try putting in what the author shows here. I'll bring it up. Can you all see that okay? John, you can see that, Evan? Everybody sees that okay, right? All right, so what you should be able to do is after you put this in, local DBV11, and you're sure that that is chosen, see when you click right here if anything comes up. If it's totally empty when you do that, try changing it to V13 or whatever we put in yesterday. All right? That's the problem. I'm working with a book that's from 2015, trying to use as much of the software from the book as possible, but some of the software is also changed. All right? Did it work with a V11?
You're saying you should see something when you open the drop down?
Yes. Yes. And if you don't, try changing it. Do you remember what we used yesterday? One of you should remember it because you were putting it in 100 times. All right? So what was that we put in yesterday?
It was like B, like 9.6 or something like that.
Well, it was
It was the same.
local DB, ampersand, wasn't it V local DB?
Dash project B13.
Dash projects,
Yeah, and that's P was capitalized.
the P was V13, like that,
Yeah.
right? Then try that and see when you click the down arrow. See how I get stuff? You say, oh, I didn't. I'm not sure. We'll have to figure out what the problem is.
A lot of times, sometimes the drop down menu for server name before you type it in.
No. Now, it says here, if you have nothing whatsoever, fine. Because we want to create a database now. So if your stuff is here from yesterday, that's fine. But what we want to do is type into here, sports store. That's what is shown right here. See that? Now, I'm fairly certain I've got one called Sports Store, even though it's not showing here. So I'm going to use Sports Store, and again, I'm going to put a number in, append a number onto the end, all right, like I did yesterday. So I'm going to change mine. I'm just going to literally type in here, Sports Store, and I'm going to put 44 like I did yesterday, all right? Now, I have no idea. I'm going to hit OK. I could get an error message. I don't know.
You want store or store?
Sports, I can't spell.
It's okay.
Sports store, thank you. Sports store 44. You don't have to make yours 44. You can just make yours sports store. All right, and I clicked OK. It's thinking about it. It says it does not exist or you do not have permission to use it. Would you like to attempt to create it? Yes. All right. So I've got this now. All right. So I have that, but as of right now, there's nothing in there. So if I go to tables, there's nothing to expand. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. So what I'm going to do, is everybody where I am right now? All right, then let's see what you look. Everybody else, is everybody else right there?
should have just saved you for college. Okay. That doesn't work. Yeah. Cancel. Yeah, make that change. It should be, but I think probably. Now, and take a screenshot, their message comes up, take a screenshot and send it to me, and I can put that in the class.
All right. The database is simple. It has one table in it. So as shown on the bottom of page 171, we want to right mouse click on tables and choose add new table. All right. That'll bring us up to here. Come on. There we go. You saw that from yesterday. Okay. Knock this way down in size. And again, this is loading, so
I also think this is better.
that looks like the same one he's got. No, but what I told him to do, you can do the same thing. I told him to take a screenshot and email it to me, and I will, as soon as we're done, I will take a look at it tonight and see if I can figure out what the problem is. Well, while mine is spinning around here not doing much, for the rest of you, all right, you can go in and define the schema, which is right here. So you can either manually type that in, or you can use the designer. You know how to do both. We've done both. I'm just going to grab this, copy it, see if it's giving me anything back. Put it in here. Why it does that? We're shrinking and it'll get bigger and it'll get smaller. If you put that in, when you get done, click the update button. When you're done, after putting in the information shown on the top of page 172, click the update button. When you click the update button, if it comes up and it looks like this, and you do not get an error, it should say that it's the user action. It's created the table. See that? And if you've got all that, click the update database button. If all of that worked, so if all of that worked, you can close this, all right? And when we refresh, by clicking this refresh button here, now we've got a table. Everybody see what I'm on my screen here? Now what you can do is right mouse click on the name of the table, products, and choose Open Table Definition. All right. And we only need this part. It's in here. Double check and make sure that is exactly what yours looks like. All right? That is the same thing as the schema that is shown on the bottom or the top of page 172. And again, I'm being a little pragmatic. We're slowing it down because I want people to have the right stuff. I mean, the two guys who've had problems so far, it's nothing they're doing. Could be a machine issue. It could be something else. I don't know. All right? All right, I'm going to close that. Now, right mouse click and choose Show Table Data. Right mouse click on the name and click Show Table Data. All right? Look on the screen if you would, please. Everybody. So we've done this, done it, done it. This is what they want you to add. It's easier if I go to the next page, because that's it. See that? So you will enter kayak for the name of the first one, a boat for one person for the description. Do not put in the product ID. It should manually be put in for you. Everybody hear that? So if you would please add these, 4, 5, 6, about 9 or so records. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. These are the actual 9 records that will be in the database. Oops. So when you get done, it should look like this, unless I made mistakes. I don't think I did. Did you send me that screenshot? Well, if they were still typing, I was gonna see if I could look at it quick. But Pretty sure that's the same one that he got, so.
That's the error I have. I do get it too, all the things that people are like certain settings and changes inside stuff. It worked now. I didn't do anything set. I just say if she said a project B13.
Okay. So I will finish that later. Grace, would you mind telling me one more time what was that? It was
It was local DB/project.
all right. Now I can sort of spell local DB / projects B13 like that. Okay. Is that how yours was set up, John? When you did it, you might want to try doing it one more time, following the steps in the book, and Luke, you too, and just make sure that that's what you've got set up in there. All right?
I still have the .0 something for it, so that might be.
Anything's possible. It worked? Okay. He changed this. So on your handout on page right here, he made sure that he set the project to this. It's on page 170. Now, I'll take for granted that between now and the end of the period tomorrow, you'll be able to add the data, or at least some of that data, into there. Okay? Work or not work? Thank you for that, Grace. Appreciate it. Still thinking about it, or what?
Yes.
Okay. Same error. Okay. We'll have to take a look at it. All right. 1 out of 2, so that's better than none out of 2. All right. All right, if you look up here, please, the author says, recent versions of the entity framework had a nice feature called Code First. Guess what? You know what that is. The idea is you can define classes, etc. This is great for greenfield development projects. These are few and far between. Instead, I'm going to show you a variation of Code First where I associate the model classes with an existing database. We are going to try to follow his lead. So the first thing to do, if you look on the screen here, now I'm hoping this isn't a problem. He used version 6 of the entity framework. We'll probably be using version 6.2. All right, it shouldn't be a problem. And to be honest with you, I think when I did it this summer, I might have used 6.1. All right. So grab these 2 lines of code that are shown here, please, on the middle of page 174. Copy them to the clipboard. Then in your project, if you've got this data in here already, you can just close that. All right. But do a tool, bless you, tools, new get package manager console. To bring that console back up again. All right. Same thing that we saw before. Got a bunch of junk in it already. I don't know if I can try this just to show you. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I don't know if it takes a CLS. It does. So if you want to clear your window, you can just type in CLS for clear screen. I don't know if it takes clear also. It does. So you can type in either clear or CLS if you want to clear that window out. Then right mouse click and paste back in the install entity framework to each of the projects. All right. There's the first one, hit enter, there's the second one. Again, it's the code that is right here on page 174, which just says make the references to the entity framework and the entity framework SQL server available to these two, all right, to these two projects. All right. And the author says that you may get errors when you do this about binding redirects. Now, the author makes mistakes in this book. All right. If they're errors, you can't ignore them. Does that make sense to people? No. It's if you get warnings in the console telling you, meaning it turns yellow, that's okay. If it turns red, meaning you had errors, something did not work. So it would have to be debugged. All right. As it says, the command adds the entity framework package to the solution. It says we need to install the same package in both the domain project and the web UI project because both of them are going to work with the database, either directly or indirectly. All right. The next step is to create a context class. So, what do we want? We want to go back over. I'm going to take my package manager and shrink it way down here, there, and I'm going to make this wider. All right. I got a lot of stuff, nothing open here, but a lot of stuff here. It's a little bit hard to read. All right. But I want my domain one open, so I'm going to close my Sports Store Web UI. So mine looks like this. And I'm going to open up the domain one. We've already got something called abstract. Now we're going to make another thing called concrete. Now, I want to tell you the difference between abstract and concrete. You probably won't remember this, and it's okay. Next semester, when we work with Java, you'll be creating your share of interfaces. When something is abstract, like that, what that means is you can't create an instance of it. You know how we create stuff and we say equals new this or new that? You cannot do things like that with something that's abstract. The opposite of abstract in programming terminology is concrete. So what we're going to do here, again, we want to create a context class that will associate the model with a database. Create a new folder in the domain project called concrete. So right here, we are in the domain, right mouse click on it, add, new folder, there it is, and we want to call this concrete. In there, we are going to add a new file. All right? So I'm going to, again, I don't want to get too far ahead or behind in here. So it says we want to add a new class called Dbcontext.cs. All right? Dbcontext. EF for entity framework, big D for data, little b for base, context because it is the context class. So again, I'm going to right mouse click on here, add, class, Dbcontext.cs. When you do that, it should look like this. Then it wants us to basically get rid of everything that's in there and replace it with what's shown on the bottom of page 174 and the top of page 175. So I think I did everything correctly. So when you get done, you should be typing in this. All right. Again, bottom of 174 and top of 175. All right, the author mentions rather in here then. It says to take advantage of the code first feature, we need to create a class that is derived from system.data.entity.dbcontext. And guess what? You know what that is. You've already done that. All right? We have already in the past, we have created the equivalent of this. What's different in our example is there's only one DB set in there because we only have one table. All right, so that is new. That's different. So the author says, next, I need to tell the entity framework how to connect to the database, which I do by adding a database connection to the web.config. Before you do that, if you've already done it, then you've already done it. Look on the screen, please. This is not right. We want to use that same path that Grace gave me. All right? So in other words, you can copy that in, but go ahead then and change that path. Hopefully I kept it. No, I didn't. There it is. Whoops. All right. So I screwed it all up. Local DB. Is it project or projects? Plural. All right. So you will want to change yours to that. So why don't I just grab everything and then make the change? Okay. Now, no matter how, I have to make this really small for you to be able to see all of it. But please, this is the most important part of class today, believe it or not. See this line? See this right here? Okay. Technically, all of that should be one line. So technically, because they did it because they ran out of room, I should come in there and say initial space catalog, true, boom. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the first line, the whole connection string really should be put into one line. There's a way around that, and I'll even show you that in just a couple minutes. That file exists in sportstore.webui, and it's the one at the very bottom. All right, that web config. Whoops, that was interesting. It's that one at the very bottom. Okay. does the author say to put that in? Right after configuration. If for some reason, if you look up on the screen here, please, I'll give you time to finish. But if for some reason you just like, I understand what you're saying, I got to separate this thing. What you cannot do is separate anything in double quotes. So notice I've got here add name equal Dbcontext. Then, because I've ended everything in my double quotes, then on the next line, connection string equal double quote, all that stuff until I get to integrated security equal true. Then on the third line, provider name equal. So you can either make it one humongo line, that's typically how most developers do it, or you can split it up. But if you split it up, don't split it up the way the author did in the book. Make sure that every line has got, the double quotes. You say, well, how do I make it as safe as possible? Put everything on one line. So Dbcontext space, put that in on the next, right after it, space, and then put that in. That's the safest way of doing it. So everything is literally on one line, right? That's actually what I did in the real example. Yeah, this is where it's kind of funny. The author, notice I switched the project here. Well, wait a minute, nice to tell people, so you don't go through your sportstore.domain looking for a web.config that doesn't exist. All right, but yeah, I went back to the web UI. Yes, you did. All right, and it says I had to split the value across multiple lines to make it fit on the page, but it is very important to put either everything on a line or at least everything within the same set of double quotes on the same line. All right?
Sorry, real quick, can you show what we got in the connection?
Yes. So, add name equal this, and then connection string, data source, but I changed it to what she said, in parentheses, local DB, / projects v13, semicolon. Now, yours, if I called mine Sports Store 44, if you just called your sports store, don't put the 44 in there. All right? What I didn't realize, this was my own ignorance, was when I went back and I basically uninstalled Visual Studio 2017 and installed 2019, it keeps all your databases. So I probably have a couple hundred databases on mine.
I gotta think.
I think what we'll do is we'll just go up, we'll finish this section, and we'll just start it with a pagination tomorrow. All right, that way we can try to get Luke back in the grind with everybody else, and I want to make sure everybody's is working to that point. All right? You figured it out? Oh, good. All right, then we'll keep going. All right, so we've got all that. And now I'm on the bottom of page 175. There will be another add element in the connection strings of the web config file. Visual Studio creates this by default. Anytime it says it does it by default, so you can ignore it or you can delete it. Just leave it in there. All right? Okay. All that remains, we're on page 176. All that remains is to add a class file to the concrete folder of the sports store domain that's called efrepository.cs. So I'm going to sports store domain. This thing I don't need to have open anymore, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to do a file save all, and I'm going to close this web config. I'm going to close this one too. All right. And it says that we're supposed to go back into our domain folder. And in our domain folder, we want to add a new class to concrete. So I'm going to right mouse click on the concrete class, choose add, choose class, and we are to call this EF product repository.cs. EF product repository. Again, it's shown also on page 176. All right, that is a class file. Click add and replace the contents that are there with what is shown here in figure 714. This we're going to have to talk about because there's a big difference in here from what we have been doing previously. So when you get done, it should look like what you see on the screen here. Even if you're still typing, please for a second, please look up on the screen because I want you to understand something. In the past, whenever we did this, we always had something context, colon, and we had Dbcontext. We don't have that now because we are using that interface, all right, rather than using Dbcontext, which we have used previously. We're doing the same thing, but we're not having where one file is as dependent on the other as the way we did it. So the author mentions then after this, this is a repository class that implements the iProduct repository and uses an instance of the EFDBcontext, which we just put in our web config file. To use this, we need to go back to the ninject bindings and replace the mock repository binding with the real one. So in other words, again, don't have to look, but please listen. Ideally, when we make this change on 176, and then when we run it on 177, we are now getting the data. We will be getting it from the database we created and not from what we had before, all right, which was that mock repository. So the next thing to do then is to come back into here, all right, and to go back, where is that? I believe that is, all right. Well, my machine is locked up, so I'm trying to unlock it. never seen this happen before. Well, I mean, I have no choice. You got to take a break because my machine's locked up, and I've got to get it unlocked. All right?